Thank you for lasting this long into the conference. We're excited to hear from Alessya for the afternoon keynote. Please make your way to a seat and quiet down, and I'll pass the mic to Alessya.
That's okay. Good afternoon. Really fantastic to be here to meet all of you. I am Alessya Visnjic, and I'm literally standing between you and the happy hour, which is not the best place to be. I also thought that I'm going to have my presenter slides, and I don't. They're kind of hiding here in my laptop, so this will be my first try at improv. Not sure what you signed up for, but that's what it's going to be. So first of all, I would love to thank the organizers for bringing me here. I'm very humbled and very honored to be speaking here. 10 years ago, I couldn't imagine myself being on the stage like this, and I hope, well, at the very least, I hope I won't bore you. But I do hope to inspire you to think about AI in a robust and responsible manner, because I believe that the future of responsible AI is in here. No pressure. So, all right, so a little bit about me so you can relate. My path to where I am now, I am the CEO of a small but mighty company called WIDS. And my path has been both very familiar and very unfamiliar. I was born in Kazakhstan. That's the country that was probably made famous by Borat. That's the most common point of reference. And I grew up there until I was 13. I lived on a street that was named after a woman. In fact, it was the only street that I knew in our city that was named after a woman. The woman's name was Sofia Kovalevskaya. And I was really confused when I was a kid, because I thought, well, basically, I have to become a mathematician like her, because that's like the only reason why they name streets after women. And that's how my path to becoming a mathematician began. I moved to the United States when I was 13. I went to school in Vancouver, Washington. So I guess, again, very familiar path for some of you here. And I came to study at the University of Washington, studied math. I stayed true to myself. And I graduated with a degree in applied math in 2008, which was like the worst year to graduate, basically, aside from 2020, which was COVID. And I really wanted to pursue a PhD, but my parents talked me out of it, rightfully so, because the only path for a mathematician in 2008 was to be a math teacher. They did not think that they moved to the United States to raise a math teacher. That was not as enticing of a career. So I went and I joined Amazon, and I've heard quite a few people from the panel, and I'm assuming there are quite a few people here who work at Amazon. And at Amazon, I was a software engineer. I worked in many different teams, and in 2012, AI became very exciting. So basically what's happening now happened already in 2012, some of you probably remember, and I joined the very first organization inside Amazon that was focused on getting AI to power various aspects of the business. And that's where I really fell in love with my job. And one thing that I started discovering about myself is that there are two things about my job that I like but equally well. One is math, which AI provided, and the second one was people. So I kept trying to put myself at the intersection of people and math, or AI at that moment. And responsible AI was not as common of a thing to discuss. There were no conferences focused on responsible AI. There were no principles that are published by every organization on responsible AI. It was very niche. So I just tried to work on something that makes it easy for people to develop AI and makes it easy for people to make sure that it works. And today, that's called responsible AI. So I wouldn't call myself a data scientist. I call myself an aspiring data scientist. And over the years, as my life evolved to being a mom, I learned that I began caring about the intersection of AI and people even more, because now, especially looking at the state of the AI technology and how powerful it's becoming, it's ever more important to make sure that we use this technology responsibly. So at this point, I think it's pretty safe to say that I've dedicated my career to doing things for making AI more accessible, more faithful to doing good for the humankind, and I do it, well, for my daughters and hopefully for all of us. Aside from that, I also play Beat Saber. That's probably like the one way I can relate to younger people. And I bake. So that's me. And if you're passionate about responsible AI or any of this sounds interesting and you want to talk about it, you want to debate, you want to discuss how to navigate into this career, feel free to ping me. I'm most responsible on LinkedIn, but my Twitter is also there. All right, so now hopefully my life story gives a little bit of foundation and we can move on to the topic. So I'm assuming a lot of you here would not find this surprising, but if you do, this is fact. You are experiencing AI hundreds of times per hour. In fact, anytime you navigate on pretty much any website, all of the recommendations, all of the personalizations are generated by AI algorithms. And now, especially with the most recent announcements done by OpenAI yesterday and Google during the I/O conference, AI is going to be ever more present in our life. And I think this is something to acknowledge and maybe repeat a few times because this technology is becoming the most transformative technology of our lifetime. And mastering either how you rebuild this technology, which I think is kind of in your hands and all of your hands, and also mastering how we explain how this technology works and what are the limitations of this technology is absolutely critical for our lifetime and for our future generations. Another thing that I don't think is going to be controversial is that AI applications power every modern enterprise. So if you are studying data science or math, like me, you don't have to study data science, you don't have to be in a specialized field to go in AI. When you move on in your career and start working in these various organizations, as I say, around the lakes in the Seattle area or elsewhere, you will likely be working on applications that are impacting human lives hundreds of times per hour. So I like to talk about responsible AI specifically in this context because it's the builders who help us decide how to build AI responsibly and who help educate everybody else, all the stakeholders who might not be proficient in AI, to ensure that AI is built responsibly. And why is it important to build it responsibly? Well, because unfortunately, AI is like, I guess it's the really boring metaphor, it's like Pandora's box. It comes with great power and great responsibility. I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone to see some of these headlines. I think the recently most popular one is from Air Canada, where Air Canada got sued because their chatbot was giving discounts to people that they were refusing to honor. Very unfortunate. That's one example that makes me cringe a little bit, but unfortunately, the way AI tends to go bad can get really bad. It could be discriminative, as I'm sure you all have heard examples of even Amazon's own recruiting systems being gender discriminative. It could, there's a ProPublica quote in there about New York legal systems being discriminative. So making sure that we acknowledge the limitations of AI and invest into developing AI responsibly is not just very important for potentially your family and your immediate future generation, but for all of us, for everybody who opens again a website on any given day. Well, unfortunately, a lot of the responsible AI talks tend to focus on this, on all of the scary things that happen because of AI or because of various reasons why AI is unregulated or not implemented correctly. But I don't want to focus on that because, well, first of all, there are a lot of talks that do that. And second of all, because I have a very unique opportunity today to be standing in front of basically the future of AI. So instead, I want to focus on what you can do and maybe plant some seeds in your brains of how you can contribute in small ways or in big ways to making sure that we utilize AI responsibly. So typically when we start talking about responsible AI, aside from being doom and gloom, what comes up very often are policies. So these are just screenshots that I took from various companies who are publishing their policies on how they're going to ensure that they use AI responsibly. And policies are like good intentions. They don't work. They're just published on the website and they're very abstract. Privacy and security, what does that even mean? Like, how do you implement that? And as a consumer, how do you even react to that? Like, I think this is actually Google's like, what does it mean for me? So the challenge with the policies is that they don't typically go anywhere. And the reason why they don't go anywhere is because, again, the people who are building AI at organizations are the ones who choose to implement the policies. And there is a huge disconnect between the organization that writes the policies for the given organization and the actual builders. Probably a good decade between the two kind of get the bridge built from both sides. So I think it's absolutely critical to pause the policies and think instead about the very actions that every AI builder can do. And one thing for sure is, my mid-journey thing is cut off here. One thing for sure is that while any data scientist can be the responsible AI champion, that's a lot of work. So imagine, you already have a completely full 40-hour work week, and then somebody comes to you and says, well, why don't you make sure that everything you do complies with this list? That is really overwhelming. I'm missing, so I was generating a lot of these images with Midjourney, and this is an image that got generated to a prompt that was asking to show how a data scientist practices responsible AI. This is pretty overwhelming. I would not want to stare at these charts. But unfortunately, that is what it kind of boils down to. You have to map very abstract policies to your day-to-day actions, and I think that's very hard. So instead, what could you do? And I'm still working on the list, and this has been a distillation of a lot of insights that I've gathered from working with organizations. So at WIDS as the CEO, I work with organizations like some of our public customers like Square and Intuit and Nordstrom to ensure that they're implementing AI in a responsible manner. Specifically, we help these organizations set up tools that would help data scientists do their job every day, create transparency and observability. And through the past 5 years, I've been distilling kind of simple truths, simple practical things that you can do day to day, and they're not heroic by any means. They're very simple. So I'm going to share them here, and I'll love your feedback as I go. So the first thing, actually one thing I forgot. I'm going to share 3 things that are going to help you kind of ramp up on what responsible AI is without, actually none of those things say they do responsible AI, but these researchers who all happen to be women, just coincidentally, they work on this different aspects of what I think composes responsible AI, and through their work, you can learn how to talk about various challenges and dangers. So the first one would be Dr. Emily Bender, and she's local here. I was actually in my script, I was saying I need to make sure to ask whether she's in the room because there's a very high chance of that. She is a professor at the University of Washington, and she focuses on computational linguistics. And I love her work because she made it really easy to explain the types of limitations that AI has to anyone. Because as a data scientist, your job is essentially to know the limitations and then boil them down into a language that is accessible to a manager who potentially has no background in this field. And Dr. Bender came up with a really cool phrase, stochastic parrots, and that's how she describes AI. I could really relate to that because I have a parrot at home. His name is Luigi, and I've been living with Luigi for longer than I've been married. And he's very smart, he's tiny, and he can say things. And when people come over and meet him for the first time, they're convinced that he knows what he's talking about. Unfortunately, he doesn't. He's just very good at pattern recognition and at parroting things and at getting people's reactions. So he just cycles through his vocabulary until he impresses somebody, just like ChatGPT. So the reason I love Dr. Bender's work is because, again, she doesn't go around and say, this is how you do responsible AI. She says, this is how you think about the AI limitations and how you make this information accessible to various people in the organization that you work in. Next one is Dr. Joy Bombini, and she works on AI fairness. Again, I really love her work because she makes it simple and accessible. She published multiple books and even a movie that describes sources of bias and how AI makes these biases more extrapolated, more dangerous. And again, it's really easy to just say AI is biased, but it's super powerful to see examples in movies. For example, this mask she made very famous because she essentially printed a mask that would fool facial recognition systems, or rather, not fool them, but guide them to correctly recognize her. Because the facial recognition systems were recognizing her as a man until she started wearing a mask. Very unpleasant, but again, a very, very easy way to communicate where the biases are coming from and how they manifest in systems that we face every day. The third person is Rumam Chaudhry, and she is currently working as an independent advisor, surfacing and mitigating security risks in AI. Here, in this picture, she's running the first ever red teaming exercise at DEF CON last year, and this exercise is aiming at surfacing security flaws in AI systems like ChatGPT, which you probably have already used, probably even today. So as far as that technology goes, this field is completely new, and most organizations don't even know what types of security risks are present. So Rumam's work is very important because, again, she makes it very accessible. She runs these red teaming exercises at conferences, and she produces a lot of content to make sure that understanding of AI security threats is accessible to consumers, to organizations, and to our government, because regulation is going to move in at some point, and making sure that this regulation does not block innovation is one of the things that we need to think about. So I would say if you are curious about becoming a responsible AI expert, or you just simply want to learn how to talk about limitations and risks and biases in AI, these three women are absolutely incredible, and I highly recommend looking at their work. So from here, I want to present three very, very simple things that you could do in addition to kind of getting to the first principles of what are the limitations of AI. And again, these activities could feel very, very insignificant, but from working with enterprises for the past 5 years, I've noticed that I typically come in with a very advanced advice, with tools that they could put in place, with different capabilities, different processes, and that is almost too far ahead of where they are. I think making a change in how organizations think about AI begins with very, very small actions that come directly from AI builders like yourself. So the first one, again, very boring. I'm not going to make any huge revelations, but starting with data. And before the generative AI wave, there was a data-centric AI movement that was started by Andrew Ng. And before that, there were multiple different data movements because, as you know, data is the fuel for AI. But more so, data is where basically all the problems that AI has, like everything from biases to copyright issues to edge cases and limitations in your model, they're all in data. And unfortunately, it's a lot more exciting to work on newer models, new model architectures, beat the benchmarks, which is really popular right now. Even the latest GPT model, what they did focus on first and foremost is showing benchmarks. They did not share where they got the data, unfortunately, but they're working on it. So starting with data is absolutely crucial, and that is probably the biggest elephant in the room when you're starting any AI initiative, is asking, where is this data coming from? How was it gathered? How relevant or irrelevant is it to the task at hand? What are some of the hidden biases in this data? It's a very, very simple question, and unfortunately it doesn't get asked often enough. The second one is baking in human oversight. And that's, again, very boring, because isn't AI all about automation and cutting down the manual work that we're doing and making us do things faster? Yes, and yes, and yes. However, as it stands today, the technology is not ready to, let's just say, take the guide wheels off. And even in the most solved AI problems, like, I don't know, forecasting of the housing costs with simple linear regression models that have been used for many decades already, even these use cases should not be completely autonomous. Thinking about how a human can interfere in the process, audit the process, evaluate whether the model is making correct predictions or not, is very, very crucial to build in. And unfortunately, it's usually a complete afterthought. I don't have enough fingers on my hands to count how many times I've heard somebody say, oh, we don't evaluate our artificial intelligence because it's intelligence, it learns. Unfortunately, in most cases it doesn't. The fact that we named it artificial intelligence really kind of got us to shoot ourselves in the foot. Without human oversight, any AI system eventually, even if it starts performing really well, eventually goes stale, eventually the biases rise, and if there's no way to audit the system, then, in the best case scenario, the ads that are being shown are going to become irrelevant, and that's going to cost the company a lot of money because the conversion will drop. And then the worst case scenario, well, somebody will be denied a credit card because the AI system is no longer relevant to that segment of users. So speaking about human oversight, about auditing, about evaluating when you're building the next system is absolutely crucial, despite of that, this being not a super popular opinion. And lastly is about emphasizing limitations. And this is where I think, even though the first two items could be kind of built in and there could be a process that is established and the tools that are established around this, the last one is completely a burden of AI builders, because there is absolutely nobody in the room when you're discussing a new AI project who could explain, elaborate, in a very accessible way, what are the limitations of this technology and what are the places where this technology should be used and should not be used. And even if this is a fantastic use case for this technology, where would it potentially not work as well? Are there segments of customers where it wouldn't work? Are there geographical regions where it wouldn't work? Without explaining that to the stakeholders around you, to your team, again, you're risking to be part of an organization that thinks artificial intelligence is intelligent and is going to learn. And that is very dangerous. All right, so just to reiterate, super simple, super boring things. While responsible AI is an endeavor that we're probably going to be traveling on for our entire life, trying to understand how to adjust to the technology that is developing really, really fast and how to ensure that this technology continues to impact us in a positive way. I think if we even do one of these things, every time we start a new AI project, we are going to be much further along and compared to where we're at right now with respect to implementing AI responsibly. All right, so I don't want this to sound like a pep talk. I figured I should include a handful of happy notes and maybe sad notes. So first of all, again, it's an honor for me to be standing here. Actually, yesterday I was giving a presentation of YLabs to the leadership of Chanel, the company. And after my presentation, I sat down and I said to one of the people there that I am a lot more nervous about this keynote than that presentation, because here there's a lot of responsibility. I'm being completely sincere when I'm saying that, and sorry for the burden, the future of how we do AI, how we adopt AI, how we incorporate AI into various aspects of our life is in your hands. And it's completely up to you, to every single AI builder, whether that's the career they're choosing, but also every single consumer. Even if you're just AI adjacent and you came here to listen to what's happening in the data science space, the fact that you are here and you've listened to all these talks means that you understand way more than average consumer about what AI is, what are the limitations, and where should it probably not be used. So it's really, really on you. You are the only ones who have the power to make a difference here. And lastly, oops, I didn't want to end on a super happy note because we're not there yet. So I thought, okay, if all of the things that I said in the presentation are going to be too much, because it's 4:30, we're all ready for happy hour, I want to just leave you with one thought. And I learned, I'm an engineer and I'm just learning marketing, and I learned that fear works the best. So there you go. If there's just one thing that you take away from here, from my 30 minutes with you today, is when you're working on designing an AI application or even consuming an AI application, think of your family. If you're designing it, think of your family as your customers, as the end users of what you're building. If you're using it and you're suspecting that it's not working correctly, that it's discriminating or it's biased or it's plainly broken, think of your family being impacted and do something about it. And with that, I'm done. Questions?
Do we have any questions for her?
I really like how you had it like 3 bullet points, very easy to remember. But on the topic of building in human oversight, I was just curious to hear your thoughts on perhaps like legislation or any federal oversight committees that could come up in this issue.
That's a fantastic question. And, well, my answer is both hopeful and not, because legislation moves really slowly. I would say the kind of early sign of us having some kind of set of government-imposed processes on how to use AI is spelled out in the EU AI Act, which is just in the process of being adopted. As far as the US goes, there is a lot of discussion and advocacy, especially around generative AI today, but as far as concrete regulation is still ways away. I would say, in 2012 when I got into AI at Amazon, one of the things that we talked about at Europe's the AI conference is regulation, and everybody was worried. And then in 2013, we talked about regulation, and last year we talked about regulation. It fortunately moves really slow, but I do think that there is a place and kind of a set of mechanisms which could regulate how AI is used, especially in the public sector. I think is very important. And I hope that people like Umang Chaudhry, who is guiding regulation across kind of security aspects, and there are a handful of other really amazing professors with PhDs in AI who can guide the government to make sure that we adopt the best regulation.
I appreciate you walking this. I have a question. How do you see, what would we be 5 years, 10 years from now, consider we have all these fancy AI application available to us?
Well, if we have all the fancy AI applications, I think we'll be really, really lazy. Like in Wall-E, you know, those people who are moving in these floating chairs and drinking lots of Coca-Cola and eating lots of fries. But you know, ultimately, there's a lot of excitement around AI. I mean, even the announcements that were made by OpenAI yesterday, they have demonstrated completely new modalities in AI. They're now doing direct audio to audio generation, and that's incredible. That means that the world is going to become smaller because real-time translation is here. You can talk pretty much to anyone who does not speak your language, and it will be pretty much real-time, like having an interpreter, which is incredible. I think from the enterprise perspective, where I spend a lot of time, enterprises are very focused on bringing the AI technology into various aspects of the business, and I think that will definitely impact, basically every occupation, because enterprises ultimately are all about cutting costs and automating and making things more efficient. So one way or another, all of us are going to become experts in augmenting ourselves with AI in a way that makes us more productive in 5 years for sure. And then, you know, I think unfortunately, there will be probably a lot of really annoying chatbots, and it'll be really hard to get to like a human representative in any customer service that you're trying to get to, which is my personal pet peeve. I'm not enjoying all the chatbots. I think they make it really easy for a consumer to navigate any kind of service. And what else? On the positive note, watching the tutor, for example, that OpenAI released yesterday, they had a really cool demo of like a ChatGPT tutor that was explaining trigonometry to a high school student. I think that is an amazing application of the technology if it's used in the right amount, because you can't just sit your kid at an iPad and be like, oh, it's okay, ChatGPT will teach you everything. That sucks. But it certainly can augment both the teachers, because as you know, in public education there's always not enough teachers. So hopefully that technology could be used to make sure that every child gets due attention and help that they need to ramp up with certain topics.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, when do you think AI will replace data scientists? And if like they're writing our code, then, I mean, now we need to review the code, but one day we may not need to review the code anymore, and what should we do?
I love this question, and I'm gonna wait to answer, but first I want to know what everybody else thinks. So if you think that AI is going to replace if you think that AI is going to replace data scientists in 10 years, please stand up. 5 years? 2 years? Next year? I tend to agree. I do not think that AI will replace data scientists for many reasons. When it comes to coding, for example, we're seeing incredible results with, let's say GitHub Copilot. But the types of tasks that the GitHub Copilot completes are very mundane. I mean, the way I like to explain it, and my partners at Microsoft would not like it, is previously I would walk in the hallway at Amazon and engineers would always have Stack Overflow open when they're coding a new task. And the Copilot is basically making it easier to get your answers from Stack Overflow directly into your code editor, but you still have to think, right? It's a little bit better with replacing the variables and looking at the API documentation, but it does not produce anything novel, aside from things that completely do not make sense. So from that perspective, I think as the technology, the transformer architecture, what it does is essentially predicts the next best word. And when it comes to coding, well, that's basically how code editors work, right? They do auto-completion. Now it does auto-completion a little bit a lot of it with a much longer context window, but it's still auto-completion, and there's nothing novel that it produces. So from that perspective, I don't think data scientist's role is in danger, but I do think that data scientists would be asked or expected to be more creative, to solve harder tasks, essentially not just the tasks that you can easily solve by using the Copilot, which is copying things from Stack Overflow, but rather tasks that require a lot more creativity. And hopefully if this technology is used well, is used correctly, it would allow us to move the state of the art of various industries that are trying to do technology transformations much faster, because in the end of the day, there's still a huge shortage of engineers, of software engineers. So I do think that this tech can affect us in a positive way, but it'll definitely not get us out of our jobs. So your job security is here, especially if you do AI responsibly.
My question is, I don't have a question, right here.
Yes.
I don't have a question, just a quick comment to the, when the question was asked about regulations for AI. I just wanted to share that the federal government has an executive order, or the Office of the President has, as of November 2023, where you can publicly comment on a very, very long list of trustworthy and safe uses of AI across many sectors, including criminal justice, healthcare.
That's awesome.
And so if you are thinking about this, you can just Google those terms, and they are asking for public comments on this. Protecting the workforce, like there's just like, I think about 17 different topics there.
That's really cool.
Thank
I
you.
did not know about that. Thank you. And it's Washington State? It's in the state of Washington?
It's an
Executive order.
Yeah,
Sweet.
federal.
Sweet. Thank you.
What do you think? What industries do you think AI is most dangerous for? And what industries do you think most beneficial?
A hard question. What industries do I think AI is most dangerous for, and what industries is AI most beneficial for? I don't know I don't know if I have an opinion on kind of breaking it into these two buckets. I have seen AI used in healthcare in both really bad ways and really good ways. And the bad ways would be triage algorithms that are not built correctly, that if they're fully relied on would keep certain patients with certain insurances, for example, out of being seen by a doctor in due time. That's a bad example. I've seen really good examples where AI is used in kind of taking notes as the doctor speaks, and helps the doctors work through their kind of notes submission and the end of the shift much faster. So they're both good and bad. I have seen definitely, I've given an example earlier where AI tutor that was presented by OpenAI is really exciting, but also we've seen endless examples of, if you have a kid who's addicted to any game, I guarantee you 100% that there is an AI algorithm that actually powers the way the game is structured, so horrible. And I think I could probably come up with kind of two-sided examples pretty much for every industry. So it's really hard to tell. It's more about how is it applied and is it used to benefit not just maybe the bottom line, not just the revenue, but rather used to benefit kind of the end users, the consumers, and so on.
Oh, hi, question. So obviously these machine learning algorithms are biased because we as human beings are biased, and oftentimes they go into a more extreme version of our bias. But do you think that best case scenario, the machines will just reflect our own bias, or do you think it's possible to have truly unbiased AI? And what is the goal?
My husband is a philosopher. He studied the classics in Princeton, and this is the type of conversation we have. And I never quite decide which side I fall. Well, I think one of the challenges with biases is the fact that they're dynamic. So, if we look back in history, it's really easy for us to point out biases. Hindsight is 20/20. If we look at the technology today, it's very, very hard to discern, what things are biased until we see the impact of this technology. I think even Steve Jobs, in kind of towards the end of his life, realized how terrible iPhone is for kids, and how, bias probably towards the marketing that they've done and the apps that they've built, but it became very, very clear, even though it started with a good intention. So it's hard to tell. It's hard for me to take a position. I do think when it comes to making decisions with AI, the magic is really when you have an AI decision-making system and a human decision-making agent, a human agent that is making decisions, and they try to agree or disagree. I think a lot of the kind of most reliable systems that are built, even if we look at like manufacturing or space engineering, the best process is looking at agreement and disagreement and trying to, across multiple decision makers, and trying to understand the source of that. And that is probably the only kind of principled way to detect bias. Unfortunately, with AI, again, when we don't have any human oversight, we don't even realize whether a human would agree or disagree, and we kind of just let this bias flow. If we just train AI on, well, another kind of dangerous territory is if we try to rebalance the data to make sure that the data we're taking that is generated by us, which has all of our biases, and we rebalance it, it doesn't always make things better, because then it starts creating biases and other directions that we didn't design for. So it is very, very tricky to overcome these biases. I think, unfortunately, the only thing that you could proactively do is realize that it's going to be biased and communicate in which ways it will be biased to make sure that there's awareness of these limitations.
I think we have time for one last question.
Okay. Thank you so much for providing us with such good insights. I'm Harshita, and I want to ask, away from AI, you're also the CEO and co-founder of WIDS Labs. So how has your journey been from mathematics to building startups? What are the challenges, and what did you learn from them?
Ooh, that might really keep us away from happy hour for a while. Let's see. I think if I was to quickly answer this and summarize, the easiest way to go from an undergrad degree in mathematics to being the CEO of a startup is to take big risks. There's really no other way to put it. So, for example, I left Amazon in 2017. I just quit my job. I didn't have any backup. I was in a really good place because I was single, I didn't have kids. So I just, moved back to Seattle and told my parents that there's a very high likelihood that I'm going to be living in a basement. And I took a year off to explore. I was at Amazon. It was a fantastic place to be. I spent 9 years there, but I felt like I want to do more. I want to create. I want to create independently of a big company, and to do that, I really had to step back and basically rebuild my network, rebuild how I think about success, because at Amazon it's very structured. Like, you do good work, you get recognized in performance reviews, you do it 3 times, you get promoted. There's a lot of structure. And starting a company, there is absolutely no structure. It's all about kind of throwing yourselves into situations that are building your network, that are giving you new ideas, that are allowing you to meet people that are as, let's say, crazy as you are, and that's kind of how you navigate there. I would say the most important decision that I've made that took me to start the company, which the representatives of which are sitting in that corner, is go to Foster. So I got a degree after lots of meandering and looking for the meaning of life. After leaving Amazon, I joined Foster Business School and got a degree in Masters in Entrepreneurship, and that really kickstarted what I do today at Farlabs. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you, and enjoy the rest of the program, and thanks for the organizers for inviting me.